Good evening and welcome to the player draft for the Fly 2022. Over the next half an hour or so, we'll be finding out a little bit more about the makeup of the 8 teams competing at the second edition of the Fly in June. The Fly Draft 2022 is the second stage of the player selection process for this year's competition and the stage at which each head coach has the opportunity to select players for their roster and have an influence on the makeup of their squads. Following the retained player announcements in January, the women's teams already have 3 players selected, with the men's teams having 1. So let's go through a few of the draft rules. During the Fly Draft 2022, our women's head coaches will make 3 player selections, while our men's head coaches will make 5, taking each squad to a total of 6. Each competition has an available player pool from which the head coaches will make each of their team selections, and the order of the picks is as follows. The team who finished in 4th place at the Fly last year will receive the first pick, then 3rd place, 2nd place, and finally 1st place. And then the next round of selections will run in the reverse order, starting with the team who finished 1st in 2021. This sequence will continue until all selections have been made in each of the competitions. And just for that added bit of drama, the teams will have just 60 seconds to make each of their picks. I'm joined here by each team's head coach. So without further ado, let's start the Fly Draft 2022. We'll begin with the first picks in the men's competition, starting with Swift Men, who missed out on 3rd place last year by 1 goal after losing 11-10 to Hustle. Their coaches for this year are head coach Richard Gartside and assistant coach Glenn Humphreys. Richard Gartside for Swift Men, your 60 seconds start now.
My first choice to pick will be player number 50, Jake Parker.
Okay, the first pick for Swift Men is Jake Parker. The next team to make their first pick is Hustle Men, who finished 3rd in 2021 thanks to a 1-goal win over Swift, eventually finishing 11-10. They're led this year by head coach Alex Carnegie-Brown and assistant coach Andy Downing. Alex Carnegie-Brown for Hustle Men, your 60 seconds start now.
Our first pick is going to be goalkeeper Casey Hughes.
Okay, the first pick for Hustle Men is Casey Hughes. Over to Forge Men for their first pick now, and they narrowly missed out on the trophy after a hard-fought final that finished 13-12 to Rise. Their coaches this year are head coach Joe Longley and returning assistant coach Gavin Donaldson. Joe Longley for Forge Men, your 60 seconds start now.
We're going to go with Albert Whitehead.
The first pick for Forge Men is Albert Whitehead. And our final men's first pick goes to Rise Men, who are the reigning champions after defeating Forge 13-12 in last year's final. They're led in 2022 by head coach Sam Ives and assistant coach Rob Ingham Clark. Sam Ives for Rise Men, your 60 seconds start now.
First pick will be Freddie Atkins.
The first pick for Rise Men is Freddie Atkins. Now we'll move on to the first picks for the women's competition, starting with Hustle Women, who are coached in 2022 by head coach Evie Stevens and assistant Ravi K. Sitlani. They lost 14-9 to Rise in their 3rd place playoff last year. Evie for Hustle Women, your 60 seconds start now.
Thank you. Our first pick will be number 51, Dylan Whittington.
The first pick for Hustle Women is Dylan Whittingham. Next up, it's Rise Women, led by returning coach Matt Sharp. He was assistant coach last year, but he stepped into the head coach role for 2022. And he's joined by Chloe Watterson as assistant coach. They finished 3rd last year after defeating Hustle 14-9. Matt Sharp for Rise Women, your 60 seconds start now.
Okay, we'd like to pick 43, Sienna Parrok.
The first pick for Rise Women is Sienna Parrok. After Rise Women, it's Forge Women to make their first pick, led by returning head coach Connor Dockery and assistant coach Pippa Waterman. They finished 2nd at the Fly 2021 after a 21-16 loss to Swift in the final. Connor Dockery for Forge Women, your 60 seconds start now.
I'm delighted to announce that we're going to bring home Anna Saunter back to Team Forge.
And the first pick for Forge Women is Anna Saunter. And our final first pick is by reigning champions in the women's competition, Swift. They defeated Forge 21-16 in their final, and their coaching team this year contains head coach Raj Rout and assistant coach Kieran Pegram-Milner. Raj Rout for Swift Women, your 60 seconds start now.
With the fourth pick in this year's draft, Swift takes CC Green.
The first pick for Swift Women is CC Green. And that's the first picks over and done with. So we'll move swiftly on to the second round, where we're reversing the order, meaning that we're starting with Rise Men. They started the day with Ryan Huns as their retained player. Rise Men, your 60 seconds start now.
I'm going to go with Ben Buchanan.
The second pick for Rise Men is Ben Buchanan. Next to make their second pick is Forge Men. Their retained player is Thomas Rosser. Forge Men, your 60 seconds start now.
Second pick, we're going to go with Chris Summers.
The second pick for Forge Men is Chris Summers. After Forge Men, it's Hustle Men. Their retained player this year is Dave Groves. Hustle Men, your 60 seconds start now.
Thanks, Jason. We'd like Josh Turner.
The second pick for Hustle Men is Josh Turner. And our final second pick for the men's teams is for Swift Men, whose retained player is goalkeeper Elliot Hurry. Swift Men, your 60 seconds start now.
The second player we'd like to bring into the Swift squad is number 25, Matt Boyd.
The second pick for Swift Men is Matt Boyd. So next up, it's the second picks for the women's team, starting with Swift Women. Their retained players before the draft started were Anna Neville, India Chadwick, and Flora McPherson. Swift Women, your 60 seconds start now.
With the first pick in the second round, Swift takes Lucy Devine.
Okay, the second pick for Swift Women is Lucy Devine. Next up, it's Forge Women, who started the day with Alice Ripper, Emily Chandler, and Zoe Lovibond as their retained players. Forge Women, your 60 seconds start now.
Our second pick for Team Forge is going to be Bella Bowater.
And the second pick for Forge Women is Bella Bowater. Now it's on to Rise Women, who have the chance to make a second pick. They started the day with Ella Malik, Heather McRae, and Sophie Tamblin as their retained players. Rise Women, your 60 seconds start now.
Okay, we're going to go for our second pick. We're going to go number 61, Millie Home.
The second pick for Rise Women is Millie Home. And the final second pick of the day goes to Hustle Women. They retained Chess Gray, Lottie Patterson, and Ashley Snyder from last year's competition. Hustle Women, your 60 seconds start now.
For our second pick, we're going to go with number 68, Bex Ailes.
The second pick for Hustle Women is Bex Ailes. Now it's time for round three, with the picking order being reversed once again. And just a reminder that this will be the final round of picks for the women's teams. First up, it's Swift Men. Swift Men, your 60 seconds start now.
For our third round pick, and the fourth member of the Swift squad will be number 40, Austin Holgate.
The third pick for Swift Men is Austin Holgate. Now it's time for Hustle Men to make their third pick. Hustle Men, your 60 seconds start now.
We would like George Levers, please.
The third pick for Hustle Men is George Ivers. And after Hustle Men, it's Forge Men's turn. Forge Men, your 60 seconds start now.
Sam Perry.
The third pick for Forge Men is Sam Perry. Our final men's third pick goes to Rise Men. Rise Men, your 60 seconds start now.
Pete Wilson.
The third pick for Rise Men is Pete Wilson. So let's move over to the third picks in the women's competition, and we'll start with Hustle Women. Hustle Women, your 60 seconds start now.
Our third and final pick will be number 5, Jane Lee.
The third pick for Hustle Women is Jane Lee. Next, it's Rise Women's turn to pick. Rise Women, your 60 seconds start now.
Our final pick is number 75, Zimeng Wu.
The third pick for Rise Women is Zimeng Wu. Next up, Forge Women get their third pick. Forge Women, your 60 seconds start now.
Our third pick is Ella Cohen.
The third pick for Forge Women is Ella Cohen. And the final women's pick is by Swift Women. Swift Women, your 60 seconds start now.
With the final pick for this year's draft, Swift takes Chloe Weiner.
The third pick for Swift Women is Chloe Weiner. So that's the women's draft all wrapped up, and we'll go through the final teams in a little while. But first, we've got 2 more rounds of men's team picks, starting with Rise Men. Rise Men, your 60 seconds start now.
Fourth pick, Fergus McMahon.
The fourth pick for Rise Men is Fergus McMahon. The next fourth pick goes to Forge Men. Forge Men, your 60 seconds start now.
We're going to go with Tom Porter.
The fourth pick for Forge Men is Tom Porter. Next up, it's Hustle Men. Hustle Men, your 60 seconds start now.
For our fourth pick, we would like Josh Hurry.
The fourth pick for Hustle Men is Josh Hurry. And the final fourth pick goes to Swift Men. Swift Men, your 60 seconds start now.
For our pick, continuing with a intercontinental theme, we are going to pick Lewis Alhaig.
The fourth pick for Swift Men is Lewis Alhaig. And with that, we're into our 5th and final round of picks for the men's teams. Up first, it's Swift Men. Swift Men, your 60 seconds start now.
Swift's 5th and final draft pick will be a lesser known player, but nonetheless brings a certain X factor to the field. It is Nathan Kolklove.
Next, it's Hustle Men. Hustle Men, your 60 seconds start now.
Last up for us, please, is Ryan Lieber.
The final pick for Hustle Men is Ryan Lieber. And after Hustle Men, it's Forge Men. Forge Men, your 60 seconds start now.
Final pick's going to be Jack Brooks.
The final pick for Forge Men is Jack Brooks. And finally, the last pick of the Fly Draft 2022 goes to Rise Men. Rise Men, your 60 seconds start now.
last pick, we'd like to go with Harry Perry.
The final pick for Rise Men is Harry Perry. So there you have it. Our women's teams have each drafted 3 players to be added to the 3 they had already retained. And the men's teams have added an extra 5, taking their total number of players to 6, including their retained player. In the next few weeks, the teams will be further strengthened by 6 placed players on the men's side and 4 placed players on the women's side. The women's teams will then get an additional 2 development players, taking their squad number to the maximum 12. And with that brings the conclusion to the Fly Draft 2022.